Oliver Felix on bass, Earl Vulovich on piano, Mike Surpass, and Connie Jones. You see Connie, very tall trumpeter playing there. That's Connie Jones, who's a stalwart, one of the great cornet players in New Orleans. That's Ellison Minor giving a speech. Later, there'll be a sound recording with this band. Sounds great. Dixieland. Sharky Banana and the Bowling Cat. Ray Benitez on the bass. Harry Shields, his brother was Larry Shields, who was one of the original Dixieland jazz band, made the first score in 1917. The guitar player is Frank Federico, who I got to hear play at the Palm Court many times. His Epiphone Emperor guitar. Emil Christian on the trombone. Sharky, of course, was kind of a king of Bourbon Street. Onward band again. They seem to be playing in a hallway, and when I first saw it, I thought it probably sounded a kind of an intimate version of like the brass, the marching bands under the overpass in Marshall, where it's just that's Louis Cottrell, and that is Oscar Ruzon. There's Danny. Very spry in 1970. This is a big shot, guitar, and a cigar. course, the Bourbon Street Parade was written by Paul Barbaran, which was Danny's uncle, and one of the founders of the Onward Brass Band. Give a hand for the band. Next, again, April 23rd, you will see the Eureka Brass Band on stage at the festival grounds, and they're parading around, and then there's some interviews and stuff, and then there's some interesting people in the crowd that I'll point out. So let's start segment number 3. Willie Humphrey. Do you know Willie Humphrey played at the 1919 World Series in the band in the Black Sox scandal year? There's a photograph. Mahalia Jackson. Chicken Henry, the trombone player. Mayor has to get in on the action. George Wein. Michael Smith, photographer there. There's Percy. I understand it's kind of an impromptu performance with the Eureka Band as they were parading around. I don't know, Levin's Furniture, anyone familiar? Is that it? Levin's? You'll love it at Levin's? No, that's Levin's. Again. That's Kid Chic Kohler. smoking in 1970. Anagram, very young man. He features a little later with his band. I really love seeing Percy Humphrey, who I worked, my first job, Danny Barker got me a job with George Buck above the Palm Court restaurant. So I kind of lived at the Palm Court because I ate there every night, and then I'd go out with all the people every night. And I mean, even if you look at the food thing, Buster Holmes, red beans, you know, he'd be there making red beans. I got to know him. But Percy, and then also I've been, for 28 of the 30 years of Nicola Dance, I've been the host. And the first Nicola Dance was just one Sunday at, on Frenchman Street at Cafe Brazil. And it was, Percy Humphrey was the leader of the band. So Percy started Nicola Dance. And then it was a great thrill. If he knew you, he'd be playing, and when you walked in a place, he'd do this funny thing with his hand and point at you, acknowledging that you were there. And it was such a thrill. I shouldn't have done that. It was such a thrill to be in that number, as it were. So next, now this is sad. It's the Duke Ellington Orchestra, but no sound. But we have the Malabar Quartet, who will provide the music. So it's going to start out with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. This is, today's the 26th, isn't it? This is exactly 53 years ago today, Duke Ellington on stage. The New Orleans Jazz Fest premiere edition. That is Russell Procope on the, and if you know any of these musicians, this is not my specialty, the Ellington Orchestra. That is Russell Procope, I know, but I'm not sure of some of the others. If you know, call it out. My guess is this does mean a thing. There's Johnny Hodges. He passed away in a dentist's chair. He had a heart attack 3 weeks after this performance. And it turns out his last recording with the Ellington Orchestra was New Orleans Suite. That same year. told the band to wear their red sports coats. They didn't listen to me. That is Buddy Tate on tenor sax. Sam Woodyard on drums. Nice. Do we have any lip readers? I'd like to know what he's singing. I've never heard Duke Ellington sing. Guess is a local dignitary. This goes back to the 23rd in the Municipal Auditorium. It's Tuxedo Brass Band. include Andrew Morgan, Homer Eugene on trombone, as well as Worthia Thomas on trombone. And we're back to Pete Fountain. That's Jack Delaney, the trombone player. They're doing some comic number. Eddie Miller again. Okay, this next segment has sound, and it features again the Tuxedo Brass Band, and they're doing Louis Armstrong made the record where they're like doing the funeral. He called it New Orleans Function. Well, they're like walking in to a slow dirge, closer walk. They're walking through the auditorium, and then that's followed. Then Pete Fountain's band plays clarinet Marmalade, and it's a really hot version of it. So we're going to give the band a break. Give them a big hand. Making the films come alive. So here, without further ado, segment 5 with sound. Tuxedo Jazz Band. Next year I'm going to wear the neckerchief. That's Connie Jones. How about that? Pretty good, huh? I just want to say a few things about Pete Fountain and Connie Jones. One is because I mentioned Nicola Dance before. So Nicola Dance from 1994 until 2004 was just in October, every Sunday in October. Of course, 2005, October was kind of ruined by Hurricane Katrina. But we did it in November and December. And because of the response to that, we started doing it in March and October since then. And the response was mainly due to Connie Jones was leading one of the bands in that kind of November, December period. And he's there and he's kind of getting ready, and all of a sudden here comes Pete Fountain, who had, of course, lost everything on the Gulf Coast. He walks up, and there was very few people there when it was right around 4 and they're setting up. And suddenly you just see people like this. Pete Fountain's here. Pete Fountain's here. And suddenly it was one of the largest Nicola dances ever, and it really kind of energized people to say, hey, let's keep this going. Also, Pete was nice enough to allow me to interview him one time in his office at the Hilton. And one of the funniest things was, he had, did anyone ever go there or see it, a picture of it? It was just pictures of celebrities, of his long career. But the most prominent picture was the Warren Easton High School band that he was in. It was very interesting. And all the guys who worked for him had gone to high school with, and they were with him from the Bourbon Street Club all the way through to the Hilton. Also, an interesting thing, he was the guest who made more appearances on The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson was a great jazz fan, drummer, than any other performer in history. So he tells me when I'm interviewing him that day, he says, so I go to LA, and so I decide, Jay Leno is now the host. I call up and I say, hey, it's Pete Fountain. I'm in town. If you need me, if you have a spot for me. And the young person on the phone said, okay, Pete Fountain, what do you do? And he said, that was my last time calling The Tonight Show. But he was a really lovely guy. And I'm curious if that gold-keyed clarinet he's playing there is the one he gave to Tim Laughlin. I'll ask Tim next time I see him. So we are now at the penultimate clip, and among my favorites. It's very varied. It starts with Clifton Cheniere's band. Of course, we're just seeing the jazz, but they had all different stuff happening around. There's like, Ellis Marsalis, the New Orleans modern jazz, people at a concert. If you look, there's a great variety in this program. Then there's the Creole Fiesta Association, singers and dancers, and they do a little cakewalk. They threw a spring party from the 1950s to the 1970s to, quote, preserve the cultural and colorful phases of old Louisiana. And their yearly Gay 90s parade and ball the parade of which wound through the 7th Ward, ending at the Autocrat Social Aid and Pleasure Club on St. Bernard Avenue, and prominent members included Dookie and Leah Chase. So there's that. That's kind of a fun thing. Also, you'll see, did any of you know Dick Allen, who with Bill Russell started the Jazz Archive, and he used to live right across the street from the Palm Court and was there all the time from Milledgeville, Georgia. He makes an appearance in this one, talking with Don Ewell. He's on stage. Also, we saw a little preview of Lars Edegran in his kind of casual garb, looking like a member of Band in Pocket, Band in a Pocket. But now he's on stage with his ragtime orchestra. And before we begin, I asked, Lars has been a longtime friend of mine, and I said, I was showing him the films. He hadn't really seen them and had not remembered all about them. So I asked him, do you remember anything of this performance? And he responded, because it was very important to him. And the birth, they had gotten the John Robichaux arrangements from the John Robichaux Orchestra from the early part of the 20th century. And they just played those arrangements. He had gotten them from Bill Russell and Dick Allen. And so I said, is there anything you'd like the audience to know? He said, I don't remember too much about the first Jazz Fest performance. The orchestra hadn't played many jobs before that. We had a bunch of rehearsals at Paul Crawford, who was the trombone player in the band, and Betty Rankin's house, and we made 2 LPs for Pearl Records. That was one of those little jazz labels. And we had played some concerts for the New Orleans Jazz Club. George Wein had come to one of our rehearsals at the Preservation Home, was very impressed, and hired us to play at the Newport Jazz Festival the following year in 1971. Chris Strackwitz of our Hooley Records heard us at this first Jazz Fest that you'll see here and recorded us in 1971. And that Newport performance of 71 also got us a lot of good New York reviews, and we started touring the USA and later Europe. And we have performed at every Jazz Fest except for the time I lived in New York between 1979 and 1985. I think that is the One More Time period when they were performing in New York. And they did the music, if you've seen the very controversial Louis Malle movie with a very young Brooke Shields, Pretty Baby, they did the music in that. I will also say that, again, you will see Lionel Furbos. He is the trumpet player in the band. Who else is in the band? Bill Russell plays the violin. Orange Kellen, who was musical partners with Lars during that period, is also in the band, and others. And then that is followed by kind of a large band. This is on your program. It is Ragtime to Jelly Roll at the 3 p.m. on Friday, April 24th. And so there's a bunch of people on stage, and then Woody Allen starts playing the clarinet. And I read an article some years ago about his reaction to being in New Orleans, and he said it was crazy. Because he played in the style of the great George Lewis. And he said, you know, there was like a Swedish George Lewis and an English George Lewis, that's Sammy Remington, a Japanese George Lewis, and I guess I'm the Jewish George Lewis. And also in that band is Big Jim Robinson, the trombone player, who of course had no idea who Woody Allen was. And so he turned to him and said, you know, young man, if you keep practicing, you might make something of yourself. So that is here, and let's go. It's Clifton Chenier from Opelousas. Just as an aside, Clifton Chenier won the Grammy in 1983. Did anyone ever go to the Slim's Waikiki Club in Opelousas? It was a great Zydeco experience in my life, but it was this like low-down Zydeco club in Opelousas. So here is the Creole Fiesta Association. Resplendent, full dress. cakewalk. I'm not going to say much. They gave a lot of money to Xavier University, and I teach at Dillard. That's John Ewell. He was from Baltimore, Maryland. He's lived in New Orleans for quite a while. I enjoy his recordings, my favorite of which is Music to Listen to Don Ewell By, which I think is a great title. There's Bill Russell, of course, American Music Records. He rediscovered Bunk Johnson, made the early recordings of George Lewis. That's Paul Crawford, trombone, or Said Frazier. There's Lionel. As a very young man, only like 60-something. That's Orange Kellen. Bass player is James Prevost. You know, I met him 20 years later. He looked exactly the same. Emmanuel Sales, Harry Shields, Punch Miller, Thomas Jefferson. That is a guy called Dr. Harry Blackburn on soprano sax. He's a very prominent cardiologist in Minnesota, and he's started coming here. He's one of the early Minnesota guys, Butch Thompson and Charlie DeVore, and many others. But there's Woody Allen. That's Punch Miller. Looks like Sing Miller, maybe? Emmanuel Sales. The Jewish lady, the George Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. Big Jim Robinson. Andrew Morgan, I think. Thomas Jefferson. Punch Miller was a circus trumpeter when he left New Orleans as a young man. Willie? Really fine records for Joe Murray's Southland label that now George Buck's company owns, Big Jim Robinson. I'm not sure, this could be one of pork chops and kidney stew, one of them. You know, they used to go around Bourbon Street, they perform with Sharkey, stick out your can, here comes the garbage man. Dick Allen behind Don Newell. And this is the original Tuxedo Band, Pop Albert French. That's Jeanette Kimball, finely dressed at the piano. That's Louis Barberan. Narvin Kimball, played for many years at Preservation Hall. That's Cornbread Thomas on the clarinet. Frog Joseph on trombone. In the pocket, ladies and gentlemen. In 5 seconds, we come to the final segment for tonight. This one also has sound. It features the Eureka Brass Band playing Just a Little While to Stay Here. You'll see who we saw earlier silently, Alice Mae Victor, the gospel performer in the gospel tent. They will show some paintings by Noel Rockmore, there are probably some here still at the moment. And his daughter also, didn't she have paintings here too? I have one of her paintings. She used to do it at the live at the Emily Reese at the Nicola Dance. And then, this is one of the few, along with Clifton Chenier earlier, but we get sound, the Cajun stage, which features Adam Ladreneau on fiddle, Sip Ladreneau, who's the short, stocky guy on accordion, Sadie Corville on fiddle, and Jerry DeVilliers, and evidently George Schmidt makes an appearance. I'm looking forward to that I'm sure he's complaining about something. No. And then you'll a reappearance with sound of Babe Stovall, Mr. Bojangles, and Willie B. Thomas, and then Mahalia, some of that you saw earlier, but with sound, hyping her big Friday night concert. So here we are with sound in 5. It'll come. She seemed to be happy to be home, doesn't she? Looking around, trying to see familiar faces. And telling jokes, obviously. And someone's tent. They like what they heard. There it is. Okay, here we go. In 7, sorry. 2, oh, there we go. There we go.
Here she is, ladies and gentlemen. The hair guy.
We're going to have a big time because, we, Louisiana, are the creators of jazz all over the world. So give yourself a big hand. And you're going to come in Friday night and help me now. Don't let me down, Help me now, help me. I want to show them how they're supposed to sing it up north and where George came from, you know what I mean? He's a great king, and he's done such marvelous work in bringing this real American music to the people all over. But he's down here in the broad patch. We're going to show him where it was created from and who is the author of jazz, Louisiana, New Orleans. Give yourself a big hand and see me Friday night. Thank you so much.
That's all that's on that clip, John.
Huh? Oh. Okay, well, it seems to be cut short. We have a technical problem with that last bit. Let's see, what was it going to be? Maybe the band, you could play. Well, does anyone have any comments or anything like that? Did you? Well, then a big hand for Don Perry for filming that. It's amazing to think now, everyone has a camera when they're at Jazz Fest, and half the people are watching everything through the camera. So maybe something you film this weekend will be up here some later time. Another hand for the band, who are subbing for the Eureka Brass Band with just a little while to stay here. Again, that's Nathan Wallman. Give him a big hand on the trumpet. Pete Rose on the guitar, Dave Malachar on the bass, and Dave Thomas on the drums. They could often be seen with a very fine band called the Genial Orleanians with a very handsome ukulelist. It's me. Anyway, and of course I want to thank the Friends of the Cabildo and Jason and Travis, who did a beautiful job. That give the Mint a big hand. And as they say, that's all there is. There ain't no more. I love Cliff Edwards, Ukulele Ike, who recorded that. Thank you all so much.